Grandberg, throw a spine.
SJP's a red line.
SJP's a red line.
Grandberg, throw a spine.
Grandberg, throw a spine.
SJP's a red line.
SJP's a red line.
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
If we don't get it,
Shut it down!
if we don't get it,
Shut it down!
we don't get it.
Shut it down!
If Reza doesn't get it,
Shut it down!
shut it down.
Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down!
So that's the question. Will we have to shut it down to get justice? And I think we have an answer, at least a tentative response we got last night at the Democratic National Convention from the nominee, the official nominee for president of the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris. Will she fight with us for justice, or won't she? And that's kind of the question we're going to explore today on this program. If she won't, if she's made clear to us that justice is not on the table, there isn't going to be justice for Palestine, there isn't going to be justice for the American people, then do we have to shut it down? Do we have any other options available to us? And again, that's something we'll be talking about throughout today's program. Let's start where we so often do, and that will be where there is clearly no justice whatsoever. The Middle East right now, Gaza, the killing just continues in, mind-numbing numbers, and the pain that's being inflicted is just off the charts, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. So this is Dateline today. I guess that picture says August 22nd. That's where the image is. But as of this morning, the report from WAFA is the Palestinian news agency, and they're reporting the numbers from the Palestinian Health Ministry. Another 42 killed in the last 24 hours, 42 Palestinians. You can see some smoke there rising. And I want to get into this just a little bit more detailed because, we talk a lot here. I talk a lot here. I don't know if other folks do. I talk a lot about the death toll and how horrific it is. In one of the videos from yesterday's rally, the number 186,000 rather than the 40+ thousand now is being used. And that comes from the Guardian and the Lancet. The Lancet reported that they estimate in July 8% of the Palestinians have been killed. At least 8%, 186,000. So that was a month ago. If that number is accurate, it's even higher. And certainly healthcare providers and other witnesses say the death number is almost certainly much higher than 40,000, which is, of course, a horrible, ugly testament to over 10 months of just unrestrained killing, bloodletting by the self-proclaimed Jewish state with the complete support of our government, of the Biden administration. So will that change? I mean, that's the question, right? Will Kamala usher in any kind of a change if she's elected? And that's, because we know Trump won't. So the question would be, will Kamala? And I think got some answers yesterday, if we didn't already have them. Did want to just mention that it's not just the killing. 90% of Gaza residents have been displaced. 9 out of 10 Gazans aren't living in their homes because of what Israel and the United States, what Israel and the Biden administration are doing. So clearly that's not justice. Clearly that's not peace. That's just, it's genocide is what it is. So just a few images. This is from that AP article. They had about 9 pictures. I'll show a few. This is at the hospital, Deir al-Bala Hospital yesterday. And mourners hugging the shrouded body. 2 women in that image. We also have a couple of men crouching over more corpses, courtesy of Israel, courtesy of the Israeli military, courtesy of American bombs, courtesy of the Biden administration. And that's yesterday. What was the number I gave you? 42, I believe, just in the past 24 hours. And, you know, I focus mostly on this program when I talk about the horrors in Gaza. I focus on the victims, the people of Gaza, the Palestinians. I rarely talk about Israeli victims, although there are some, and I don't want to pretend that there aren't. I don't want to act like there are not any Israeli victims. So this is also from the AP story, and there is Ophir Metzger, an Israeli woman who is mourning the death of her grandfather. He was among 6 corpses brought back by the Israeli military of hostages. And so they were killed. They were hostages taken on October 7. And so obviously it's not just Palestinians mourning Palestinians, but also Israelis. And, you know, you look at that and you say, oh, well, Hal, why are you so critical of Israel? Look, they're suffering too. Why aren't you empathic towards the Israelis? And I have empathy for Israeli victims. I blame 100% the Israeli government. And it's not just the Israeli leader. It's not just me who's saying that. It's not just a lot of people say, oh, it's all Bibi. It's their government. It's their military. And the fault is being laid on them, not just by Palestine, not just by the United Nations, not just by progressives in the United States, but actually even the hostages, the families of the hostages. You saw Ophir Metzger. They're incredibly furious. They're angry. They blame Netanyahu. They blame the Israeli government. And we're the ones supporting that government, giving them all the weapons of death they request without any limits, without any conditions, without any restrictions whatsoever. Even, I shouldn't say even, the hostages' families themselves are saying this is wrong, stop it. And we won't do it. The Biden-Harris administration won't do it. Maybe there'll be a sea change, right? We've got a new boss coming in. Will she be the same as the old boss? I think a lot of people are wondering that. And again, if you didn't know the answer, and I think it was pretty obvious. I mean, I don't think it was really, there was a lot of doubt where the new boss was versus the old boss. I think she pretty much laid any doubts to rest last night. I saw a post in Halitics, by the way, the Facebook page Halitics. I saw a post where one of the commenters, very frequent commentator who I've had issues with because of the tone that they've used, was ecstatic, over the moon at the speech that Kamala gave last night. So I would love to hear from that person or anybody who wants to comment on how Kamala did last night. I'll have my thoughts. I'm going to share them in a bit. I just want to give more background. By the way, 240-242-5646. It's Friday, so it's a free-for-all. Always a free-for-all on Halitics, especially on Fridays. So I'd love to hear from you if you want to join me. Just a little bit more, though, from the hostages' families, the ones who who were mourning in Israel. As we generally center the Palestinians, the Gazans, their families, the ones who've been killed, murdered by the Israeli military over the past 10 plus months, those in hospitals and residences at schools, the 90% now who have been relocated, evacuated, had to flee their homes. But again, there are Israelis who are mourning as well. And what you hear from the Hostages Families Forum is the recovery of the bodies is no achievement. It is a testimony of the complete failure to reach a deal in time. They're blaming Netanyahu, of course. They note that over that 10 plus months, Israeli military rescue operations have led to the liberation of just 7 hostages while killing, it says scores, I think hundreds, if not more, is the more accurate figure. I know there was that raid that I think netted 5 or 6 hostages who were alive but killed 193 Palestinians, if I've got the numbers right. So we're seeing an absolute abrogation of any humanity, an absolute renunciation of any empathy, compassion, concern for the tens of thousands, perhaps over 100,000 victims, perhaps close to 200,000 murdered Gazans. It's just not there. At least we haven't seen it. At least not to date. We'll go to the convention in a little bit, but I watched this video last night. I was coming back from that rally I played the clip from, and I thought this was pretty instructive. So this is Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Here's an Arab American leader from Dearborn, Michigan, and he's going to talk about his experiences interacting over the past 8-9 months since January with Biden Harris in an effort, an attempt to get them to take some action to stop the killing of Gazans by Israel. Here's the clip I thought was relevant. 2 clips, actually.
We keep talking and nothing is happening. And I don't understand why we're not able to stop it. This country is able to stop the killing tomorrow. If there is a will, there is a way, but the will is not there anymore. So I welcome the discussions, but those discussions are leading us nowhere, Amy. Nowhere, nowhere. Our people are dying every day in a way that is unprecedented. We see them on television with body parts, their children, carrying children dead, 16, 17 years old, carrying those babies, dripping with blood. That is not a very good scene. That is not how peace is going to be generated in the Middle East. That's more war and more hate, not peace, not harmony anymore. So something has to be done to stop Benjamin Netanyahu's appetite for killing.
Yeah, so very powerful. And the description of the body parts that we're seeing, that's a lot on TikTok and other social media, which is part of the reason the students are so angry and so upset, because they're seeing images that are akin to those that many of us remember seeing in our history books, or maybe watching the documentaries of the Allied forces as they penetrated Germany, and the Russians penetrated Poland and took pictures of Auschwitz and the other death camps and concentration camps. So this is what young people are seeing. And the ralliers yesterday at GW University that where I was, these are their family members. There were many, many Palestinian students there. These are grandparents, these are parents, these are siblings, cousins, uncles, and they're being wiped out. They're being eradicated. There was optimism there. There were people saying, we're going to prevail from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. And you have to live in hope, right? I mean, being hopeless and in despair is something that we humans really aren't equipped for, right? I mean, because then you just crouch down and you die, and that's not good for your genes, right? Because we're all motivated ultimately to create as many little us's as we can and pass them on. If we didn't, then we wouldn't. But the ones who do that are the ones whose genes are passed down. But in the end, it's very hard for me to have optimism. It's very, very difficult. If you think, oh yes, Kamala's going to make a difference, call in. Let me know why you think that. 240-242-5646. Just a little bit more from this Arab American leader, and then I am going to get right to the convention and play clips from it.
I am sorry. If they think that they can give us a lip service and then on November 5 go and vote for them because the choices are very bad, the other choice, they are wrong. Because there is another choice that we can sit home, and this is what most of the people are going to be doing, sitting home and not going out to vote.
All right, so I was a little disappointed by that statement, not because they're not going to vote for the duopoly, but because there is a choice, right? There is a Green Party candidate. There's actually several pro-peace candidates out there. Claudia de la Cruz from the, I believe it's the Peace and Revolution Party or Peace and Socialism Party. And then there's Cornel West. I don't really endorse his candidacy, Dr. West, but he's certainly better than the duopoly. And my candidate, Jill Stein. So I'm disappointed from the Green Party. I'm disappointed to hear the leader not even mention her name. But he's saying, hey, we're not going to vote for either one of these candidates unless we hear something from Harris that causes us to reconsider. So let's hear from her. She spoke last night. This was her opportunity to address those who fear the genocide will continue unabated with the full support of the U.S. government. So let's start with her talk about her discussion about Gaza.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
All right, so she's saying we're working to get the hostages free, right? That's the first thing. Not the victims of the Israeli bloodbath, the hostages, who also are victims of the Israeli bloodbath. She does mention a ceasefire, but not permanent peace, right? I mean, and I know they'll say there's a two-state solution. That's not viable. The only solution is a true one-state solution where everybody from the river to the sea, regardless of their religion, regardless of their ethnicity, is an equal citizen. That's the only solution, and it's not really hard to understand.
And let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October.
All right, so again, centering the victimizer, centering the criminal state. And again, I'm not attributing every single Israeli as a criminal, but the state itself is out of control. The country itself is out of control. And she's centering them. She's centering the country whose army is on a rampaging genocide through its neighbor. She has no words for the 40,000+ victims of the Israeli Defense Force, Israeli military. None. She has no words about the settlements. She has no words for the victims of Israeli sex crimes, the Israeli military sex crimes. None. I don't see any change. Do you?
Number 7, including unspeakable sexual violence, and the massacre of young people at a music festival.
All right, right. And there, okay, so yes, it is awful, right? That's true. But that's the massacre she talks about? The only one. The only one. And again, what I heard yesterday at the rally, is accurate. Palestine is the oppressed state. Palestine is the victim. They are retaliating. They are responding against their oppressor. Do I like killing innocent people, young people at a music festival? No. But anything that Palestine does in response or in retaliation against Israel, much like anything they do against us, has to be recognized as a form of freedom fighting. It's a very bad form. It's not a form that I endorse, but ultimately they're still fighting against their oppressors. And she's got nothing to say to that. Nothing about that. No empathy, no compassion, no recognition that Israel, through its actions, brought it on itself, brought that attack on itself.
At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating.
Okay, let's talk about what happened is devastating. Now remember, she attributed the attack on Israel to Hamas very clearly. She doesn't say one word about who's killing in Gaza, who's eradicating Gaza, who's leveling Gaza, who is ascribing collective guilt to every single Palestinian. She doesn't, no. Israel gets no blame, none.
Many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale.
And who are they fleeing from? Does she say that? From the Israeli military? No, doesn't come up. We just need a ceasefire that'll all solve everything.
Of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war. It's
just false. It's just not a true statement. If they were working to end it, and it's not a war, by the way. It's not a war. It's indiscriminate killing by Israel. But if they were working to stop it, it would be stopped. I did a little 60-second short on this. Their work to stop it is, please don't kill innocent civilians. Here's some more bombs to kill innocent civilians with. That's their work.
That Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Sounds so nice. There's no roadmap to get there. She doesn't ascribe the fact that they don't have dignity, they don't have self-determination, they've been evicted from their homes. Israel is occupying their land, settling on their land. No mention. There's simply no reason for you to believe that Kamala Harris will effectuate any change in policy. In a cruel, inhumane, devastating policy that the Democratic Party has endorsed because of AIPAC money more than any other reason, and fear of losing many Jewish votes. But that said, that's because of AIPAC. AIPAC has propagandized to a degree that many, tragically, people, including probably most Jews, accept the lies. That Israel is simply defending itself, Israel's at war, Israel's the victim. All of that is false. All right, there's Gavin. I think that's Gavin, right? Maybe not. All right, so that's one clip. We'll get to some more in just a moment. But I'm so astonished when I read people who are happy about her nomination, who are happy about that speech. And we'll play some other aspects of it that are also extraordinarily problematic. There was really nothing good about it. And I saw, this guy post and he says, oh, it was a great speech. Well, tell me what you liked about it. Where were the specifics? When is something going to be done differently? What are you going to do to address not just the suffering that the United States is causing around the world, but how about just at home? There was a little bone she threw out there. We'll get to it. But let's just talk a little more foreign policy, because the president has so much power over foreign policy. I think that it's really instructive. It's important for us to vote largely, not exclusively, but to really look at a president's foreign policy. You look at what W did, right? His foreign policy was so awful, caused so much harm to our nation, made us so unsafe, right? That's W. His policies made us so much less safe. And not incidentally led to the deaths, or, the reason we're less safe is because they led to the deaths of millions of people in the Middle East. Look at Barack Obama's foreign policy. It was awful. He destroyed Libya with his Secretary of State, his first Secretary of State. They basically destroyed Haiti. Haiti is now, right, a failed state. That's in large part because of the neoliberal agenda that Hillary Clinton imposed on the island. It was already there. I mean, I'm not saying, but she perpetuated it and made it even worse. Haiti's now a failed state because of that. We are burning record levels of fossil fuels around the globe because Hillary Clinton traversed the globe to make it, to promote fracking. So to say that, well, I'm more concerned about domestic policy, I understand that. But the president's power when it comes to foreign policy is so tremendous that, well, it may be the primary thing you should focus on, because Congress has such an important role when it comes to domestic policy, but also because the foreign policy so often impacts on us. Here's Harris on more foreign policy.
I will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un, who are rooting for Trump.
All right, so yeah, it's all about Trump, where this bad person likes Trump, so therefore you have to be against Trump. But what's really important there is the baiting Iran, right? Iran has actually behaved far more responsibly than Israel or the United States. Israel basically committed a war crime on Iranian territory recently, killing one of their leaders. Killing a Palestinian leader who happened to be in Iran. And Iran did not retaliate. It says, well, hey, we want peace. We're willing to let this go. Now, I think probably let it go because they're afraid. But whatever, they let it go. They haven't been terrorizing anybody. They are defending. They're doing what they can. They're trying to provide some aid and comfort to the victims of Israeli-American oppression. And she's out there baiting Iran, claiming them the sponsors of terrorism rather than acknowledging it's the U.S. policy that is creating the terrorists, the U.S.-Israeli policies that are creating the terrorists. Now, that line, I believe, was an absolute sop to AIPAC. If you want to believe that Harris is going to be different, that she's going to show independence, right, from AIPAC, I think that line puts the lie to that belief. It's absurd. That line was in there because AIPAC has been one of the biggest detractors, critics, condemners of Iran. They want war with Iran. One of the reasons many AIPAC supporters want Trump is because he has been more aggressive in his rhetoric towards Iran. One of the best things Barack Obama did when he was president was the peace deal with Iran. When I read this, I read this in the Jewish Insider, which is a very Zionist newsletter I get every day, just to sort of keep an eye on the enemy, if you will. And they were ecstatic. Look, Harris says she wouldn't hesitate to take action against Iran. Isn't that great? We might get war with Iran. Isn't that a positive? So she threw that in there almost certainly. I'm sure the speechwriters, had heard from AIPAC, hey, we want you to go after Iran a little bit, Set the table for reprisals, for bombs, for maybe war with Iran. Justify Israel's actions against Iran. That's what we want to hear. And that's what they heard. They didn't hear about what Israel's doing to Gaza. They didn't hear any Palestinian rights or pro-Palestine speaker at the convention. They weren't given a spot. But the baiting towards Iran, it wasn't like Harris doesn't say anything about the victim, specifically about what Israel's doing to Palestine. She shows, yes, it's so sad, it's so awful, but the people, the individuals that she highlights are the victims at the music festival. She doesn't talk about the bombing. She doesn't talk about the hospitals, the civilians, the children, the sex crimes by Israel. Those aren't mentioned. And neither is anyone else allowed to mention them. The DNC said, nope, no pro-Palestine speaker, no uncommitted speaker. It's not going to happen. But when it comes to war with Iran, we don't even need a separate speaker. We got our nominee to go right up there and say it. I'm not going to hesitate to take any action. I'm going to make sure Israel can always defend itself. Yeah, there's real change coming. So, actually, before I get, I don't like that at all. What is that about? So, before we hear a little more, this was my take, right? I saw this on Facebook, I guess. I thought this was great, right? I saw a couple things. I saw on Anyone But Hillary, which was supposed to be, I think it was ironic, like, no, I'm not going to vote, like, because there's anyone but Trump, right, which is the defense. But, Hillary spoke, and she and Harris are very similar, tied at the hip. So, yeah, that was sort of me. I'm with her. I'm with the Palestinian woman with the slingshot. That's kind of my view right now after watching. And by the way, I didn't watch the speech live. I just went back and cherry-picked through it because I won't do it. I just can't. I can't subject myself to that propaganda. I can't do it. But I did Google a lot of words. Like I Googled Israel. I Googled Gaza. And Gaza or Palestine. Palestine's mentioned once. Palestinians are mentioned once, the suffering. Israel repeatedly. We're going to support Israel. We're going to make sure Israel has enough arms. We're going to make sure Israel never has to suffer like it did on October 7th again, right? Well, you think that's change. Yeah, more power to you. I wish I was smoking whatever you've got because, or drinking whatever Kool-Aid you've got because I for the life of me don't see it. Right, it's not just, right? It's not just about the Middle East. Foreign policy is more important. There's a whole big world out there. There's another war going on that we're spending even more of our money on. More blood, more of our treasure is being shed in Ukraine. So maybe, Trump is better on Ukraine. He said, I don't want to see people die there. So maybe Harris, they've adopted some of Trump's policies, right? What was it? They want a $6,000 credit instead of a $5,000. J.D. Vance proposed $5,000 for certain families. And then Harris came up with the $6,000. So maybe they're looking at Trump and they're saying, hey, he's got some decent ideas. So maybe we should look to reduce, to tamp down tensions with Russia. Is that what she's going to do? Let's find out.
Trump, on the other hand, threatened to abandon NATO. He encouraged Putin to invade our allies, said Russia could...
Well, I think she's got that a little bit wrong. It was, a decade of provocations by the West, expanding NATO east. Even Henry Kissinger, the mass murderer Kissinger, said, you don't need to do that. We don't need to have NATO in Ukraine. And we kept pushing. We helped provoke a revolution in 2014, which deposed Viktor Yanukovych, who was sort of a less anti-Russian leader. We promoted the endless war. We told Zelensky no peace through our proxy Boris Johnson. So to say, oh, it's Trump's fault. No, I think you got that a little wrong there, Ms. Harris.
Quote, do whatever the hell they want. 5 days before Russia attacked Ukraine, I met with President Zelensky to warn him about Russia's plan to invade. I helped mobilize a global response over 50 countries to defend.
So not mobilizing peace, not mobilizing trying to stop the killing before it started or started in earnest. But let's have another war. Why not?
Defend against Putin's aggression. And as president, I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies.
Okay, so you're going to get endless war if you vote for Harris. I mean, we know that now, if we didn't know it before. You're going to get an endless proxy war. From my event yesterday, or not mine, but from the event at George Washington University. So I watched this gentleman speak. I didn't stay for the march, but he referred to Harris, and I've heard this before, Killer Kamala, Genocide Joe, Killer Kamala. Some people don't like to hear that, and it's, I don't like the insults. I've said that. But hey, in some point you have to say the shoe fits, you got to wear it. And he was just talking about the colonialist aspect of what Israel's doing, settling in the West Bank, clearing out Gaza for more Israeli settlements, and her support for that policy, which we just heard clear as a bell. You can't vote for her. I mean, you can. I can't say you can. You can do whatever the hell you want. But you can't vote for yourself and believe rationally that this is some kind of a vote for a better world. That, she'll make things better. No, you have no basis for that. None. Foreign policy is really important. I'm not saying it isn't. But many people, understandably, vote more based on domestic policy. And, I've been giving it a little bit of shorter shrift. Does she have some maybe there's something good. Some specifics.
And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide.
All right, let me stop it for a sec there. Okay, I mean, that's fine. That's really nice. That's good boilerplate. But it's kind of like what you heard about Gaza, right? Oh, I'm working so hard to make things better, to stop the killing, to end the war, which it isn't a war, it's just a massacre, right? I'm working to end it overtime. And again, their efforts basically consist of, please don't kill more Palestinians. Here's some more bombs you can use to kill Palestinians with. Healthcare. We know how to reduce healthcare costs. The whole world knows. You have government-provided healthcare. You have single payer. The whole world knows how to have effective healthcare. She's against Medicare for all. She's flat out told the New York Times that. And there's no, how are we going to reduce prices? Okay, I heard, so she had in her economic plan and I think this got a little bit more criticism than even deserved, right? That she was going to go after the corporate price gougers, right? Like if the supermarkets or the suppliers are start to charge, $8 for a dozen eggs, which I think we saw prices get close to that at one point, maybe 6, 5, 6. Well, we'll go after them. How are you going to do it? It's really tough. We don't know. Defining price gouging is difficult. Yes, you should definitely go after collusion. But the real solution, I mentioned this before, is antitrust. Is have lots and lots of suppliers all competing with each other. Lots of stores, outlets, all competing with each other. That's the solution. It's a solution we relied on and worked very well for the first half, or early on in the first half of the 20th century, at least into the 60s and 70s, when we had an aggressive antitrust division of the Justice Department. Of course, the Antitrust Law, Sherman Act, and Antitrust Acts began during the Teddy Roosevelt administration. And those really made a huge difference. You get rid of the trusts. You get rid of the corporations that corner the market. And you make them compete on price. And it worked. We've fallen far from that. The head of the antitrust division of the Justice Department, her name is Lena. I don't remember her last name. Apparently is very good. Kamala's been under a lot of pressure from corporate interests to jettison her, replace her with someone a little more corporate friendly. She doesn't mention that. She doesn't mention monopolistic pricing, oligopolistic pricing. And that's unfortunate. All of this is just basically commercial for the Harris presidency. So anything she says that's really good, take with 3 grains of salt. Unless there's real specifics. No, I'm not going to totally reject, if there's real specifics. But when she tells you she's going to do bad things, believe her. I'm always going to be there for Israel. We might have a war with Iran. Oh, yeah. Don't worry, Ukraine. We're going to go after Putin with guns blazing. Yeah, you can believe that. You can believe that. All right, one more little snippet I want to play, because one of the mantras of Halitics, what I insist is essential for justice, is that everyone have enough and no one have too much. And one very, very obvious feature, it's not a bug, it's a feature of American society, is some people have way, 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 way too much. Now, you can define too much in different ways, and someone say, well, I don't know what you mean by too much, Hal. Well, I'll tell you what, $1 billion, too much. More money than, so much money that in 10,000 years you can't spend it, too much. More wealth controlled than the pharaohs, that's too much. Elon Musk, too much. Jeff Bezos, too much. Is Harris, does she talk about that? Does she talk about wealth and income inequality? Well, she does talk a little bit about taxes. Maybe she's going to say we need to tax the rich a little higher. Let's find out.
Tax hike, we will pass a middle-class tax cut that will benefit more than 100 million Americans.
All right, so she's talking about cutting taxes, middle class, so not for the rich. All right, I'll give her that. But the problem is the wealthy already pay virtually no taxes. Many. The only thing she goes after Trump for, she says, oh, he'll pass a tax cut for the rich and a tax hike for the middle class. What we need is a government that ensures everyone has enough, yes, but also that nobody has too much. When you start talking about tax cuts, one of the problems there is you're making the argument, you're making a Republican argument. You're saying taxes, even for people who are doing pretty well, right? Because I think she said she's not going to cut taxes, or she's not going to raise taxes on anyone. She never promised she would raise taxes, but she promised not to raise them on anyone making under $400,000. That's an enormous amount. Is she going to cut taxes for everyone under $400,000? You're making an argument that government isn't a wise steward of your money. Government can't do good things with your money. That's just palpably false. In many, many instances, government does great things with money. Schools. We should have government hospitals that would be doing great things for people. Firefighters. Police. These are all essential. Without government, we don't have it. Lawless. A lawless, violent, chaotic world where the rich would have even more power with their private armies than they already do. So I'm not big on, touting middle class tax cuts necessarily. But hey, if you said, we're going to pay for that by raising taxes on the billionaire class, I'd be like, good. That's a good thing. Thank you. I looked for that. Nothing in her 40-plus minute speech. Nothing about raising revenue. No, we have a major budget deficits right now. The government is consistently running a debt every year. That's a problem. I understand some progressives don't think so. And there are times when the government should run a debt. Keynesian economics says that when you're in a depression, deficit spending makes sense. And I agree with that in certain circumstances. But when you have people who have billions and billions and billions of dollars, you can tax them at much higher rates. People say, oh, hell, you're saying billions, but wealth tax could be unconstitutional. All right, just raise the income tax to 95% on everything over $10 million, right? That's fine. Just raise the estate tax to 95% on every estate over $100 million, right? That's fine. I think that would generate enough money. So we don't have to raise. I don't oppose a wealth tax personally, but if you're going to, your whole argument is, oh, it's unconstitutional to tax wealth. Fine. Just raise the income tax. Just raise to, 95%. It was 94% under FDR at one point. So you want to do that, Kamala? Maybe that can pay for your tax cut for the middle class. But right now we're running big deficits. It's not a good idea. We're leaving more and more debt for our next generation, generation after that. And some of the programs you're talking about are going to cost us more money. Right? I mean, you just said you're going to keep dumping more and more money into Israel. You just said you're going to support Ukraine to fight Putin forever, I assume. That's going to cost us money. That is not free. So on top of all that additional spending or that continued spending, you're going to pile a tax cut when we're running deficits? I don't know. Doesn't seem like the smartest plan ever. But hey, that's just me. 240-242-5646. Listen, we're almost up on the weekend. I want to do a couple things. First, I thought this was a really good, we'll do a little humor. Just a little humor. I was kind of pleased to see that apparently, and I don't know this for a fact, but apparently Paul Krugman does watch Halitics. And why do I say that? Why do I say he watches Halitics? Well, last week, a week ago, on the free-for-all, I'm going to prove that my case here, on the free-for-all, we talked about Kamalanomics. You can see the date. There's no game playing here. There's no Photoshop. I don't use Photoshop. I use GIMP, I use GIMP to make these, but I didn't play around with it after the fact. August 16, that's 1 week ago, today's the 23rd, so 16 of August 24, Kamalanomics. And I even highlighted it. I think I actually highlighted that. I did highlight for this, for the purpose of this. But anyway, talk about Kamalanomics. So is Krugman watching Halitics? I wonder, because his column on Monday, 3 days later, Kamalanomics. Is he watching Halitics? I don't know, but I got to say, the argument seems pretty solid, doesn't it? Monday, Krugman talks about Kamalanomics. The previous Friday, Hal talks about Kamalanomics. Of course, we have different views of him because he loves it. But, just wondering. If you are watching my show, Paul, please give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. I've got no problem with you using my little portmanteau word there, Kamalanomics, Kamala and economics. All right. This is from Jill Stein. I don't think there's any question, right? Look, she's for the Green New Deal. It's not enough. I want taxes on gasoline much higher, but Kamala's not for that. No climate emergency. This is just about energy, right? I think she's got one about Gaza. I mean, that to me is the biggest issue of all: war, endless war. Stein also, by the way, for peace with Ukraine, peace between Ukraine and Russia. So all of those areas and everything, Stein is better. The only argument for Harris that I think holds any water is she's not Donald Trump. If you think that's good enough, hey, whatever. I mean, that's on you. I can't tell you that your priorities are wrong if you believe that. My litmus test is you got to be better than nothing. You can't be somebody who's going to make things worse if you want me to vote for you. And I don't think there's really any argument that both Democrats and Republicans have made things in power, at least since Reagan. All right, final requests. This will be a little shorter program. I started at 12. Now, I know Shade was concerned. He posted on Facebook, you got to start your show every day. I did get going at noon today, but there was a tech issue, which I really don't even know what happened there. It's kind of weird. It's like I just sort of I disappeared. So I thought, all right, I'll start over again. I'll do a new show. Because in the end, they sit up there forever on the YouTube server, or at least for quite a long time. And I don't want it to, have to go back and re-edit them and repost, and better to just do a new program that's pretty clean. I won't say pristine, but clean. So yeah, sign the pledge. It's right there on the in the show description. Please do. Will it make a difference? See, this is why I'm hopeless. I don't think public pressure makes a difference with these people. I just don't. I don't think they care. For example, they were happier to run with Hillary and potentially lose than Bernie. 2016. In 2018, again, now I don't want to be too much in the argument, one of those people who says, oh, Bernie should have won, Bernie would have won, the Democrat Party had it in for him, which is all true. And it is true that Obama rallied the forces against Bernie and in support of Biden, because they looked at the candidates, they looked at Klobuchar and Pete and Kamala and all of them, and they said, Biden's our best bet. So that's all true. But it's also true that more American Democratic voters wanted Biden in 2020 than they wanted Bernie. Now, I wish that wasn't the case, but it's the case. It's the truth. I don't believe that was the case in 2016. I think most Democrats wanted Bernie. And I think it was clear Bernie was a stronger candidate against Trump. No question. I mean, Nate Silver himself has said that. Hillary was a uniquely bad candidate. I don't want to say, okay, Bernie was robbed in 2020. I think he was kind of robbed in 2016. I don't think he was robbed in 2020 because we could have nominated him. Everyone knew who he was. But Jim Clyburn went on TV and radio in South Carolina and said you can't vote for Bernie, and people didn't have to listen to Clyburn. They could have said, no, that guy's a BSer. That guy's full of crap. He's not a good congressman. He doesn't represent my interests. They could have said that, but they didn't. So I grudgingly acknowledge, yeah, Bernie was not the choice of the Democratic primary voters in 2020. But I also will say this. The leadership, the elites in the Democratic Party would rather lose to Trump than win with Bernie. They would rather lose to corporate-controlled candidates than win with Bernie. So that's why I don't know that it really helps to try to get Kamala to sign a petition, to present her with a petition with 10 million signatures on it. Because in the end, the Democratic Party leadership, establishment, cares more about policy than it cares about people. I wish voters cared more about policy. I wish voters said, hey, I'm not going to vote for her just because she's an African American Asian woman. I'm not going to vote for her just because of that. Her policies are bad. Her policies hurt our country. Her policies hurt other people. I'm not going to vote for her because that's what the Democratic establishment says. The Democratic establishment says, I'm not going to support Bernie. I don't care if he's running as a Democrat. We won't support him because we don't like his policies. We don't like redistributing wealth. We don't like peace. We don't like universal health coverage. We don't like any of that. So we're not going to support him, even if he is a Democrat. We're not going to support Nina Turner, even if she is a Democrat. We're not going to support Jamal Harris, even if we're not going to support Jamal Bowman, even if they're all Democrats. We don't care. We care about policy. And if their policies aren't harmful, if their policies aren't pro-corporate, if their policies aren't pro-war, we won't back them. I wish Democratic voters had the same attitude in reverse, but you don't. Most of you don't. And that's why we are where we are. That's where we are, why we are, when we are. Okay, well, on that sad note, depressing note, however you want to look at it, I'll be back Monday. It will be Monday with Arlen, and have a great afternoon and enjoy your weekend.